Okie dokie. Today we're going to learn about the Japanese god Susanoo. Susanoo is the storm god. He's a figure known for his turbulent temperament and unpredictable actions. His behavior was often driven by deep-seated emotions and a sense of defiance, which were characteristics that frequently led him into conflict with the other deities in the pantheon, especially his sister, Amaterasu, who is the sun goddess. One of the pivotal moments in his mythological narrative is his expression of grief over the loss of his mother, Izanami, and this set off a chain of events which ultimately ended up in his banishment from the heavenly realms. Izanami had died giving birth to Kagutsuchi, the fire god, which was an event that profoundly affected Susanoo. This grief was a source of his anger and erratic behavior, and the pain of losing his mother left Susanoo feeling that he was abandoned and that it was unfair that it had happened. Now, there are a couple different stories to this. One is that Izanami and Izanagi produced 4 children, Amaterasu, Susanoo, Hiraku, and Kagutsuchi, before Izanami died while giving birth to Kagutsuchi. The other myth, or the other story, was that Izanagi produced Susanoo, Hiraku, and Amaterasu during a purification ritual where Izanagi had to cleanse himself of the taint of the Yomi, which is the Japanese underworld, after he had tried to retrieve Izanami from there. Honestly, I think the first myth works much better when it comes to the story, and you're going to see why. Now, before I get started, think back to your childhood, to when you or your sibling, friends, would throw a tantrum, crying, screaming, or rolling on the ground, or anything like that. And if these were the things that you did, well, I'm going to say this in advance, because I have never met a person that took throwing a temper tantrum to the next level, like boss level hissy fits. So, saying that, be prepared. So Susanoo's grief manifested in bouts of rage and defiance. His sorrow over Izanami's death was so intense that it disrupted his sense of duty and balance. And unlike Amaterasu, who embodied order and light, Susanoo's emotions often drove him towards chaos and destruction. He longed to see his mother again, so Susanoo expressed a desire to visit the Yomi, the land of the dead. Before embarking on this journey, Susanoo ascends to Takamagahara. He wants to say farewell to his sister Amaterasu, so as he did so, the mountains and the river shook and the land quaked. Amaterasu was suspicious of this, and she went out to meet him, dressed in male clothing and clad in armor, prepared to fight. When Susanoo proposed a trial by pledge to prove his sincerity, she accepted. So to prove his intentions were pure, Susanoo and Amaterasu would take each other's objects, one a necklace, one his sword, and they would see who would create the best kami, the gods, a deity. Susanoo created 5 men from Amaterasu's necklace. Amaterasu created 3 women from his sword. But Amaterasu tricked her brother. She claimed that because the necklace was hers, the men were hers, and meanwhile, the women she had produced from his sword were his. And thanks to her clever interpretation of the rules, Amaterasu basically won the contest. But the contest didn't resolve the underlying issues between Susanoo and Amaterasu. Instead, it brought their rivalry to a head. Enraged by the results, Susanoo went on a direct rampage. So this rampage disrupted the harmony of the heavenly realms and the earthly world. So one of the acts of destruction was Amaterasu's rice paddy ridges, which was an action that had far-reaching consequences for both the divine and mortal realms. To understand this, in ancient Japan, rice cultivation was not just an agricultural practice, but a sacred duty. It was important to both the economy and the spiritual life of the people. The ridges in the rice paddies played a critical role in this process. They were carefully constructed by the farmers, and these ridges served multiple purposes. One of them was irrigation control, which helped manage the flow of water into and out of the fields, ensuring that the rice plants received the right amount of water to thrive. The other one was soil integrity, which helped contain the water within designated sections. The ridges prevented soil erosion and maintained the fertility of the land. The other one was crop protection. And because of the structure of the ridges, they provided a barrier against pests and diseases, which could otherwise spread unchecked through the fields. So driven by a fit of rage and desire to assert his dominance, Susanoo descended upon the rice paddies and began to dismantle these vital structures. His actions weren't random, they were deliberate. So Susanoo tore down the ridges. The carefully controlled irrigation systems were thrown into disarray. Water, once managed with precision, now flowed unchecked, flooding the fields. This drowned the young rice plants and destroyed the crops that the farmers had painstakingly nurtured. The destruction of the crops led to immediate economic hardship for the farmers, Rice was not only a staple food, but also a critical part of the economy, used in trade and as a form of tribute. And the loss of the crop meant starvation for many and financial ruin for the community. In the context of Shinto beliefs, rice cultivation was a sacred act with rituals and festivals centered around the planting and harvest. And the destruction of the fields by a deity was seen as a profound violation of this sacred duty, causing spiritual anguish amongst the people. But Susanoo wasn't done, and decided that he was going to start covering up the ditches in the rice paddies. This had significant repercussions for the livelihood of the farmers and the spiritual harmony of the community. In traditional Japanese rice cultivation, ditches play a crucial role in maintaining the health and productivity of the fields. These ditches serve several important functions. One was water drainage. It's the primary purpose of the ditches. It allowed excess water to drain from the fields, and proper drainage prevents waterlogging, which can suffocate the rice plant's roots and lead to poor crop yields. The other one was erosion control. Ditches help control soil erosion by directing runoff water away from vulnerable areas, which preserves the integrity of the soil structure. And the other one was disease prevention. The ditches help prevent the spread of waterborne diseases and pests that thrive in stagnant conditions. So Susanoo set out to disrupt the carefully maintained agricultural infrastructure. His decision to cover up the ditches was a deliberate and calculated move to cause maximum damage to the rice paddies. And by filling in the ditches, Susanoo disabled the drainage system. Without proper drainage, the fields quickly became waterlogged and created an environment where the rice plants could not thrive. Waterlogged fields led to bad soil conditions, where the lack of oxygen in the soil prevents the roots from absorbing nutrients effectively. This act of sabotage compounded the damage already inflicted by Susanoo's earlier destruction of the ridges, and the combined effect of the broken ridges and covered ditches meant that the fields were not only flooded, but also unable to recover due to the lack of a functioning drainage system. If that wasn't enough, Susanoo started tampering with the irrigation sluices. In traditional Japanese rice farming, irrigation sluices are crucial for controlling the flow of water into the fields, and these sluices serve several key functions. They allow farmers to precisely control the amount of water entering the paddies, ensuring that the rice plants receive the optimal amount of moisture at different stages of growth. Susanoo released the irrigation sluices, causing an uncontrollable surge of water to flood the fields. It led to immediate flooding. The paddies, which relied on a delicate balance of water levels, were overwhelmed by the torrent. The force of the water caused significant soil erosion. The fertile topsoil essential for growing rice was washed away, leaving behind barren, damaged fields. Then Susanoo decided that he was going to start double planting, which was pretty insidious. You're going to hear in traditional rice farming a lot. Meticulous planning and precise execution are essential for a successful harvest. Each step, from the preparing of the fields to planting the seeds and managing water levels, must be carefully coordinated to ensure the crops grow healthy and strong. Farmers must plant seeds at specific intervals to ensure each plant has enough space to grow, leading to healthier crops and higher yields. Susanoo deliberately started double planting, sowing seeds in fields that had already been carefully planted by the farmers, which disrupted the carefully planned agricultural system. The additional seeds created overcrowded conditions in the rice paddies. The densely packed plants had to compete for the same amount of nutrients in the soil, and this competition led to stunted growth, as the plants couldn't access the necessary nutrients to even grow properly. So the practice of double planting, again, caused a lot of problems. After double planting, Susanoo then began driving stakes into the fields, which damaged the crops and also created significant obstacles for the farmers, which created a lot of chaos. Maintaining clear and accessible fields is crucial. Farmers need unobstructed pathways to tend to their crops, apply fertilizers, manage water levels, and conduct other essential farming activities. Unobstructed fields ensure that crops can grow uniformly and receive adequate sunlight and air circulation. Clear fields help prevent accidents and injuries, allowing farmers to work efficiently and safely. So, Susanoo drove the stakes into the rice paddies at random. The sabotage had immediate and detrimental effects. The stakes damaged the rice plants, and it uprooted them and broke their stems. The physical damage significantly reduced the yield and quality. The stakes obstructed the pathways that farmers used to move through the fields, which made it difficult for them to reach and tend to their crops, slowing down their work and making routine tasks even more cumbersome. The randomly placed stakes created hazardous conditions in the fields, and the farmers, while trying to navigate the stakes, risked tripping, falling, or possibly even injuring themselves, which further complicated their already challenging work. And Susanoo wasn't done. Susanoo then engaged in the brutal practice of skinning animals alive, and that stands as one of the most egregious acts that one can do. In the heavenly realm of Takamagahara, the gods upheld a deep reverence for all forms of life. This respect was important to their existence and governance, so it reflected the harmony and balance they sought to maintain between the divine and natural worlds. Every living creature, from the smallest insect to the most powerful deity, was considered sacred. Gods believed that all life was interconnected and deserving of respect and protection. The natural order was seen as a reflection of the divine order, with every being playing its role in the grand scheme of creation. Violating this order was tantamount to disrupting the harmony of the cosmos. So in a display of his darker impulses, Susanoo skinned animals alive. This act was shocking not only for its brutality, but also for its blatant disregard for the values and principles upheld by the gods. Skinning animals alive is inherently cruel and painful, causing immense suffering to the creatures. By engaging in this act, Susanoo directly violated the sacred respect for life. His cruelty was a stark defiance of the divine principles that governed Takamagahara, challenging the ethical and moral standards of the gods. It disrupted the rituals and traditions that celebrated and honored life, causing a cultural rift among the gods and the inhabitants of Takamagahara. After he skinned animals alive, there was one of them that was a piebald horse. Apparently it's a prized horse of Amaterasu's. And then he took the horse and he chucked it at Amaterasu's loom, killing one of her weaving maidens. Inverting the process of skinning was a metaphor for Susanoo's overall defiance of the natural order. It signified his rejection of the harmony and balance that the gods had established. The gods had set laws and practices to ensure the respectful treatment of all living things, and Susanoo's skinning was a direct violation of these divine laws. It was an act that the gods could not tolerate. Then, because he wasn't done, Susanoo committed one of the most disrespectful acts that one could do. He defecated within the sacred halls of Takamagahara. There's also another story that he may have done this in the palace of Amaterasu. This act of defilement was not only a shocking display of irreverence, it was also a profound insult to the gods and the sanctity of their divine abode. This act symbolized Susanoo's utter disregard for the divine order and the sacred spaces the gods inhabited. Takamagahara, or the high plane of heaven, is the celestial realm where the gods reside. It's a place of immense sanctity and reverence, characterized by its purity and divine order. The sacred halls within this realm are where the gods gather. The halls are considered the most sacred spaces in the celestial realm. They are imbued with divine energy and purity, and they reflect the harmony and order maintained by the gods. By defecating in the sacred halls, Susanoo showed a complete lack of respect for the gods and their sacred spaces. I find it funny because out of all the things that he did, he shit right there in heaven. He just pooped right on the floor. It was a clear message of his disdain for the divine order and the authority of his fellow deities. The act of defecation was a profound defilement of the purity and sanctity of the sacred halls. It introduced a physical and symbolic impurity into the most revered space in the heavenly realm. It was not merely a physical act, but a deliberate challenge to the divine order and the values upheld by the gods. It also symbolized Susanoo's rejection of authority and norms established by the gods. It was a direct challenge to their control and the sacred order they maintained. The impact of Susanoo's act of defecation was immediate and profound. It caused outrage and shock and disrupted the spiritual harmony of Takamagahara. Well, I think pretty much finding poop on the ground after someone goes into a huge fit of rage would disrupt anyone's spiritual harmony. But who am I? I'm not a god. So the gods were deeply offended by Susanoo's blatant act of disrespect. Who wouldn't be? This act of defilement was seen as an unforgivable insult, sparking outrage and anger among the deities. The purity and sanctity of the sacred halls were compromised. The defilement of these sacred spaces required immediate and significant efforts to restore their sanctity. The gods convened in response to Susanoo's escalating transgressions. The council marked a turning point as the gods recognized the need for decisive action to restore order and purity. Now, I find this funny because, everything that he did, they were just like, you're making us angry. And then he shit on their floor. And they're just like, nope, you've crossed the line. You threw a dead animal at your sister and killed one of her maidens. You wiped out her rice paddy fields. And not only did you wipe out her rice paddy fields, you systematically destroyed her rice paddy fields. But, we understand you were just throwing a temper tantrum. But you shit in our halls. And we can't have that. That's one too far. Led by Amaterasu, the gods deliberated on Susanoo's actions, and the act of defecation was seen as a final, intolerable insult that could not go unpunished. The gods unanimously decided that Susanoo's presence in Takamagahara was no longer acceptable. His banishment was deemed necessary to protect the sanctity of the divine realm and to reaffirm their commitment to maintaining purity and order. Hey, you can do whatever you want, just don't poop on the floor in an act of defiance. Like if it's accidental, that's a whole different story. Good night. All right, that's all I got for today. Thanks for listening. If you like it, hit that subscribe button for us. If you don't like it, that's okay too. Other than that, have a great day.